Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to continue our series and we're going to be talking about top 24 repeaters and non repeaters for wide receivers today as we go into 2025. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Well, hello everyone. I am your host, Ricky Rodrigue, and you can find me on X at RickyRod66. And I'm joined today once again by Sean Teague. You can find Sean at Sean8386. Thrilled to be here today to continue this series talking about top 24 repeaters and top 24 non-repeaters. Today is the wide receiver position. This is the eighth in our that we'll be doing. The last one we have left is tight ends, which we'll do next week. But we've done the 5 IDP positions. We've done quarterback and running back. If you missed those, you can go back to the IDP Plus Advice channel on YouTube. Check it out there. You can go to Spotify, getting some nice feedback and comments, particularly via DMs and all, which has been really nice. Welcome in, Sean. Sean, Scott Fish Bowl was kicked off this week, and I know you're as well. And if Fish Bowl has started.
Yeah, it feels like the big kickoff, the big summer blowout before school's back and before work, back to reality, and oh yeah, the fantasy football season is right around the corner, so that's the big one. All the other charity leagues are popping off, and here soon it will be redraft season in full swing. I'm excited. I'm ready.
I'm ready. So, Sean, you can do what, 25 leagues this year?
I hope not. I haven't tallied them up yet, but every year I make a list of leagues to eliminate, and it ends up only being like 3 or 4, and then somehow I add like 8. So we'll see.
All right. Well, let's jump into things here. And for those that have been watching / listening before, you know the drill and the routine we typically do. But for the new folks, want to make sure we cover it. So the story behind this series is looking back at 10 years of history. There are key statistics to learn from. And one of those key statistics is repeat rates of the top 12 and the top 24 at each position. And as you can see on the screen, we're talking about wide receivers today. On average, over the last 10 years, only 5 of the top 12 wide receivers have repeated the top 12. And of the top 24, only 12 of the wide receivers have repeated the top 24. Very similar numbers to running back. Intuitively, you don't think along those lines, but that's the way the stats play out. And so one of the things we like to do is get you thinking, as the great football diehard Bob Harris says, we're not trying to draft last year's best team. We're trying to draft this year's best team. So when Sean and I were looking at the wide receivers and the list is like, holy cow, who are we going to pull off the list? Now, we've been using the Kings Classic scoring system for both IDP and offense. The offensive scoring system for the Kings Classic is basically similar to your typical PPR scoring system. Okay. But one of the things that Sean did is Sean went into the Kings Classic details. He's been doing that for each of the different positions and saying, okay, for the last few years on the Kings Classic, how have the repeat rates been in comparison to this 10-year study? So, Sean, what did you find out as you kind of dug into Kings Classic related to wide receivers? How close were these numbers, about 5 in the top 12 and 12 in the top 24 repeating?
Yeah, so last year there was 12 of the top 24 that repeated, so dead on,
Wow.
and only 3 in the top 12, so a little low there. And now the year before, there was actually 16 that repeated in the top 24, along with 8 in the top 12. So quite a bit above the average there.
Oh, interesting. So now, once again, this is over a 10-year average, so that
Mhm.
normalizes as it takes out some of the variation, so forth. So, to your point, for that, one was dead on with 12, another was 16. There was probably another one that was, in the 8 range, and all averages out to around 12. So, but anyway, the challenge Sean and I have taken on is, since this is the 10-year average, is to look at the top 24 scoring, in this case wide receivers this week, and pull 12 off the list. So that is the challenge we took on. It was not easy, but surprisingly, Sean and I came very close when we put our different independent work together, and you'll see that here shortly in terms of what we came up with. But to begin with, let's actually flash for everyone the top 24 wide receiver scores from last year. And we kind of talked about it at the end of the last show. But Sean, when you looked at this list again since the last show, you really start digging into it and all. It was like, how did this one rate versus all the previous 7 shows that we did in terms of having to figure out who to pull off? Where would you rate wide receivers?
Oh, it was awful. This is easily the hardest to come to a decision. I've said that a couple times, and it's got harder each time. This has easily been the hardest because I really like all 24 of these guys up here. And so looking at that, trying to find 12 to take off, and then trying to find 12 more to add on it took a lot out of me. If I'm being honest, I had to really think, and it wasn't just a couple hours into this one. This one I actually spent several days flip flopping several of these guys back and forth. This easily the hardest.
You're right. It feels like we've been saying it for several weeks on several of the positions, but this one to me by far, looking at all of them, was the absolute hardest when you look at the top 24 in this list here. Now, Sean, one of the things I believe you also did when you did the Kings Classic research was looking at, of the ones that didn't repeat, how much was injury driven versus maybe performance driven and things along those lines. So, what were your takeaways from that when you looked at it?
Yeah, just to use last year as an example, we had 12 repeat, 12 not. Of the 12 non-repeaters, 50% were because of key injuries that were significant enough for them to miss enough time not to score their normal points to get on the board. 25% were basically the older guys getting kind of phased out, and a couple of those guys don't have a team currently. And then the others were a combination of just a down year, bad quarterback play, bad offense in general. So, yeah, only 50% injury wise, which I guess is probably close to what a lot of the other positions was. By far, the linebackers were the most dependent on injury. They were almost, it was like 80-90% injury related. So the wide receiver is pretty much on par with the others.
Okay. And so you mentioned that a couple of people that didn't have teams, that's the reason it fell out of top 24. So I'm guessing Amari Cooper was one of those. If I'm remembering correctly, Cooper was one. Who was the other one, Sean?
Keenan Allen was the other one that dropped off that year.
What's interesting about both of those gentlemen about not having teams is Keenan Allen, I believe, is turning 33 this year, and I think Cooper's going to be turning 31,
That
if I
sounds right.
remember correctly. Maybe Cooper's going on 30, but I'm almost certain he's going to be going on 31 by the time the season's over. So, as we're thinking about this, age does come into play as part of this and all. So now I think our audience and listeners, with kind of setting the stage there and letting them see this list for those that are looking. And by the way, if you're listening on Spotify, go to the IDP Plus YouTube channel. You can kind of go to this go to this show, and you can kind of look at all the 24 names. We won't read them all here, but I guess people are ready to see who we pulled off as our 12. But before we do, Fast Draft app, folks, check it out with using the promo code PLUS. Use the promo code PLUS. You'll get a deposit match up to $50. It's fun. It is a fast draft, just like the name says. They have IDP as well, just IDP if you want to do that. They have offense, etc. Go check it out. A lot of fun. It's got a lot of great feedback. So, code PLUS, get up to a $50 match and enjoy the fun as well. All right, with that, let's go ahead then and look at who we pulled off the list. And I have to admit, when we compared lists, I expected that maybe we'd match 6 of the 12 we pulled off. I was very shocked slash pleasantly surprised that we actually matched on 10 of the 12 that we're pulling off the list.
Yeah, it gives validation to ourselves knowing the other person pulled the same ones off. It makes us feel better about our own choices.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, okay, and so, but part of what I am with Sean on related to this, IM, DM, I don't know what to call it anymore, instant message, direct message, whatever. Boy, I'm showing my age there. Okay, we'll move on. But anyway, it'd be interesting when we start talking during the show to compare the logic that we use as pulling it off, and did we one of the ones that a lot of people might be surprised on that we both pulled off the list. We're trying to figure out the 12. We both pulled off Malik Nabers, who in most ADPs that you're looking at on various platforms, Malik Nabers is going in the first round, and yet we both pulled him off. So, Sean, let's start off with you in terms of why you pulled him off the list.
Yeah, his usage was a lot higher than I would like. 170 targets in 15 games, I believe. That's a hard pace to keep up. That's a lot more hits he's taken. He had some drop issues as well, and one of the more recent concerns I've had this offseason, he hasn't done much practicing or anything due to a nagging toe injury from college. Now, if you guys remember toe injuries, Michael Thomas, the
Yep.
PPR darling from the Saints, very similar story here. It's rehashing some old terrible memories, and that's probably got me scared off the most. And the offense itself, I'm not looking for the Giants to be very explosive or anything. I'm looking at this to be a dumpster fire year. So a lot of uncertainty here, and just yeah, that's what I got.
Well, so just building on it, so I had some of the similar concerns, particularly that toe injury and the Giants offense, and just elaborating on the Giants offense part as well. You have Russell Wilson starting, which he's not completely washed, but
Sure.
um, the issue is they have a really tough schedule, particularly the first 4 weeks. This could spiral down really quickly. As it spirals down, there's a new interim head coach, as and then there's pressure to start playing Jackson Dart. And I don't have a lot of confidence in Dart as to keep and propel Nabers into the top 24, particularly in his rookie season. So those are the additional reasons I would add on to your reasoning in terms of why I pulled Malik Nabers off the list, just like you did as well.
And if he has a lingering toe injury or whatever injury it is going into the season, and if this is just a wash away season, then they're liable to shut him down, depending on how severe an injury is, to keep him from causing more injury to himself long term. So that's another thing to think about there.
Good point.
Now,
And last thing too, if that toe injury is still nagging late in the year and they have nothing to play for, when it comes to our fantasy playoffs time, who might not be on the field for you?
right, right. Again, toe injuries are like the Achilles heel for wide receivers. They're the ones that nag on forever, can flip at any time, any game, any day. Like there's, I don't know the exact science behind of it. They're highly unpredictable.
Yep.
Uh, Speaking of a little unpredictable here, I was surprised you pulled off Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah. So that was when I pulled off that you did. And there's two primary reasons I did it. The first one is well, actually three. The first one is that he had this knee scope during the off season, which wasn't talked about a lot. But whenever you have these knee injuries, and having knee surgeries, that always makes me a little bit nervous. So that was reason number one. Number two is that there's a new offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, and I mean for replacing Ben Johnson, and oh gosh, John. The name is escaping me. The offensive coordinator. It'll come back to me shortly. And so while I expect him to try and keep a similar offense, play calling, the rapport that Johnson and Goff had, you know, Johnson helped elevate Goff to make him a good quarterback. Can that continue? So that's number two. Number three is the new offensive coordinator has also talked up Jameson Williams as well. And I actually left Jameson Williams on the list as and I think for tight ends, you'll see me leaving Laporta on the list as well when we do tight ends next week. So I think the combination knee injury, offensive coordinator wanting to bump up Jameson Williams, particularly in Williams going into a option year pickup, et cetera. I think all those things, but particularly the knee injury and the offensive coordinator, those two in particular, that's why I put Amon-Ra off the list.
Yeah, John Morton was the guy you were looking
Morton,
for,
thank you.
offensive coordinator. I also considered the knee scope to be a bit of an issue, and the line coordinator. We talked about that as well in some of these other shows, just how coordinators can change everything. And it's not just the plays that they call; it's when to call these plays, the timings that they like. Some of these guys can just nail week after week, and we don't know what Morton's going to have in store for us. So I get the concern there.
And I forgot about reason number four that which when I was going through it, but I forgot to mention here, and that is they lost two key offensive linemen.
Right.
They lost Zeitler, they lost Ragnow, right
Yep.
there in the middle of Goff. And where has Goff struggled the most? When he's got pressure coming right up the middle at him. If the youngsters, if it's Mahogany, or if it's Miles Frazier or Tate Ratledge or whoever ends up in there, the second year or the rookies, with Mahogany being second year and the other guys being rookies, that could be a real issue for Goff with that pressure in his face and how successful he's going to be. That clean pocket has made such a difference for him. I just don't think it'll be as clean this year. So there is your next reason. Now, some people would say, well, that might lead him to dump off sooner than Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would argue that it's more likely he's going to take a sack and he's going to panic.
It's going to
All
sell
right.
high or spike right in the ground.
And now, so let's go to one that, once again, I was pleasantly surprised that you had taken off the list because he's getting all kind of buzz, and that is Ladd McConkey of the Chargers.
Yeah, and I don't feel great about taking him off the list. I really don't. He was, I believe, the last one I took off. Or one of them actually was on for a while, off for a while, back on. I flipped him several times. The schedule's hard for wide receivers. For
The Chargers.
yeah, for the Chargers, yeah, their fantasy schedule isn't great for wide receivers this year. There seems to be a growing emphasis on the running game, which Harbaugh and them already wanted to be kind of a run heavy team. So you brought in who was it? Najee Harris, Amarian Hampton was drafted. So these guys, they're building a strong running game already. And then just the receivers that they brought in, Trey Harris through the draft, brought back Mike Williams. I know a lot of people aren't worried about Mike Williams, but he does have a connection with Justin Herbert. He has his trust just by being there. And then, for all of his faults, Quentin Johnson's still around too. So it kind of feels like there's plenty of receivers to target if need be. Along
And
with
Tyler Conklin got signed as well.
that's right, Tyler Conklin. A lot of battles all of a sudden to feed on here. So we may see this spread out a little more to where they're not as reliant on McConkey, where they kind of had to last year because Johnson would show up and then disappear. Injuries to Palmer and DJ Chark. So I just see them being a little less dependent on him and needing him. So less targets. Maybe he makes the most of them and sneaks on this list again. Maybe he blows up. But I see enough concern to at least shove him off slightly.
Yeah, and so adding to your thought process, and while I didn't take him off, they have two solid, sturdy running backs right now with Hampton and with Najee Harris. And last year, as the year progressed, Edwards fell apart, Dobbins got hurt, and that led to them having to air it out more, particularly in the games where Dobbins was out. And McConkey really actually was more effective in the second half of the year than the first half. Part of it was the rookie continuing to learn. Part of it was the running game was kind of hurting. And so that's another reason supporting your hypothesis of taking him off. And look, folks, this isn't easy. And one of the things we forgot to mention at the beginning of this is that when we do talk about you know, these folks coming off and the ones coming on. We're not going to be talking about ranking the top 24 per se. We're just saying who's coming out, who's going in, kind of thing. So, but anyway, once again, we're trying to get you all thinking in terms of what could potentially happen and why. It's not always, the happy roses story. Just say otherwise.
Yeah, another one I struggled with keeping on and putting back off, especially after a solid year last year, was JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. You took him off as well, which made me feel better about my decision to do so. So, I want to elaborate there.
Yeah. So there's two elaboration points here. The first one is this whole Cooper Cup slash JSN and who's going to play in the slot versus who's going to play on the outside and how all that's going to come to fruition. My gut is telling me with Cup's age and his blocking ability, he'll be more in the slot. JSN will be more on the outside, which I think will hurt some of his productivity. And the reason I think that'll hurt his productivity is because of Sam Darnold. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that he will repeat what he did in Minnesota. He doesn't have Kevin O'Connell anymore. He's got Kubiak, so from the similar tree and all, but Kubiak didn't exactly light things up in his 1 year as offensive coordinator for the Saints. You could blame all kind of stuff. Derek Carr's injury, the offensive line, but is Seattle's offensive line that much better? Is Darnold that much different from Derek Carr? And if he plays as bad as he'd been previously, then the Spencer Rattlers of the world and so forth. Okay, that might be a little bit harsh on the Spencer Rattler part, but
No
but
built up frustration whatsoever from last year by Ricky.
yeah, and exactly for those know that I'm Saints and LSU guy, so fair call out. But uh, I just don't have the confidence in Darnold, similar to the golf situation with that offensive line. Yes, they did bring a Gray Zabel into there, the rookie, but he's a rookie first rounder from a small school. It's quite a leap. The center situation, they've got a 6th rounder from last year who'd probably be starting. Um, Bradford would probably be the right guard from LSU, I know, but he struggled in pass protection. He's more of a run game baller kind of thing. The tackles, Lucas and Cross, had their share of injuries. So, and Noah Fant hasn't exactly been this great tight end. And I know people are excited about Arroyo, but he's a rookie. He was drafted not a 1st round rookie, a 2nd round rookie. Which, when you get into tight ends, there's a big difference in terms of success rates for 1st and 2nd round tight ends. So, for all those reasons, particularly my lack of confidence in Darnold and that bad O line, that's why I pulled JSN off. Anything you'd add to that, Sean? Because you pulled him off
uh,
as well.
it was the biggest thing for me was the lack of confidence in Darnold and just this offense. I don't look as Darnold as an upgrade over Geno Smith at all. If anything, I feel like they regressed. If maybe went straight across, but uh, and
Oh,
then
I don't see Darnold doing nearly as well as Geno.
no, that he did great last year because of the system that he was in. It's not him; it was the system. I feel very confident saying that. Uh, and then Cooper Cup coming in, is he going to be the slot guy? I imagine he will be. That's where he's made his living. I figure JSN is going to be on the outside. I'm looking at this offense being run heavy, and
Yeah.
then dump downs to Cup. So I'm right there with you.
I should have been reading my notes because that's the other thing I had in my notes too. I was trying to do it all from memory here, but McDonald fired the from the University of Washington offensive coordinator that he had there for the year. McDonald wanted a strong running game emphasis, which means even lower pass attempts for Darnold as well versus what Smith threw. So just a reason to pull JSN off the list.
Clint
Uh,
Kubiak is the offensive coordinator now, and I haven't seen much from him that makes me scream that hey, he can build a great winning system here. Uh, Looking at his history, it's mediocre. So
okay. All right. So then now one other one we want to talk about that in this case, you took off the list. I didn't, and that was T. Higgins. So talk about Mr. Higgins. And I have a feeling their injuries might come up in part of your conversation.
injuries is the biggest thing. The last 2 years, he's played 12 games in each. Now he did slide into the list this year. He did in the year before.
He had a couple of really big games that helped him to slide in towards the bottom of the list here.
Especially I believe the last one of the season, Just in your fantasy playoffs, I think he's when he scored his big 3 touchdown game, and I think he had another 2 touchdown game. But man, when we go back to his history, college, so back to 2018, I'm seeing 4 high ankle sprains, two, four, 6, maybe 7 hamstring injuries, and then the quad injury last year with it. Those are
I'll
all lower.
repeat that again for Higgins. Wow, I didn't realize it was that much.
One, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, 6 hamstrings, 4 high ankles, and then the quad strain last year as well.
Wow.
So it's looking like he's had a hamstring injury in each of the last 6 seasons. Now they've been low grade, grade one, couple grade twos, which great, grade three that's more severe and all that. But his re-injury risk by some, I forget what website or who I was talking to, but he had his re-injury risk at 90%. So it's not, is he going to get injured next year? It's when. And with these being lower leg injuries reoccurring, where they're reoccurring, the high ankle and the hamstring, it's the whole leg. It's a wonder he hasn't, just completely pulled off his calf or Achilles or something at this point, I think. But if he stays healthy, he could easily be on this list. But because of the repeated injuries and high injury concern each year, that's why I pulled him off. That's really it. I mean, it's a lot of injury risk here.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And on one of our previous shows on the quarterbacks, I made my prediction of Joe Burrow is going to be the MVP this year because the defense is going to be so bad. The offense is going to be good from game one. I do feel like Higgins will miss, 2 to 3 games as he typically at a minimum does, but
Yeah.
Burrow will light things up enough starting from week one that Higgins will get enough to stay in the top 24, not the top 12, but the top 24 as Burrow goes on to win MVP. And the Bengals will make the playoffs, which even though they might lose in the first round, that'll be enough for Burrow to win the MVP. So anyway, that's
You
just
heard
a
it here,
reminder.
folks.
I went out on a limb on the quarterback show. I'm going out on a limb on the wide receiver show and that Burrow thing, and the LSU bias for the record. Okay.
You heard it here. Ricky said, "Bro, MVP Andre Yoshivaz season due to T Higgins injury."
That might not be a bad, quote, wide receiver handcuff if you have Higgins as a side note.
It's really not. Another guy who's been solid year after year, but is quietly older than you think, Mr. Terry McLaurin.
That's right. Mr. Terry McLaurin has a 3 in his age. And that's the first number, not the second digit, folks. So anyway, that is issue number one. And we talked a little about age with some of these older wide receivers that fell off and all. So that's number one. Number two is his touchdown scoring rate last year for the amount of receptions he had was truly way over efficient. There will absolutely be regression in touchdowns. That's going to happen. Number three is this whole contract situation that here as of July 8th is still not resolved. And there was a report yesterday that they're still far apart and it's getting
Frustrating.
leads me to believe there could be concern about missing a little bit part. When we've seen these guys miss parts of even different spots like a Nick Bosa, for example, defense, and when they get in later, their performance suffers at the beginning of the year enough so bump them down in their results. So the combination of the age, the combination of the regression of the touchdowns, and finally the contract situation and then also Debo coming in as well. Yeah, I know there's been a bunch of fat jokes about Debo and stuff, but I actually think Debo's going to do quite well because of the way Kingsbury runs that offense. He does a lot of sharp passes, screens, getting out of Daniel's hands, let people run. Daniel's even made a comment. I'm happy to just give a little sharp pass to Debo and let him run and accumulate all those yards and stats for me. That's not quite how Daniel said it, but that was basically the message and all. And I think Debo being in a contract year and with that type of usage, it's not like, by the way, Lauren had 100 some catches and 150 targets either. Side note. So anyway, I think Debo's going to take some of that away. And all of those reasons, that's why I pulled McLaurin off. But you pulled him off too. Anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed everything. Like I said, the touchdowns is what really put him on this list. He's normally a 4 to 7 kind of touchdown guy, and he got 13. So his yardage didn't really go up. His catches were maybe slightly up, 5, 6 receptions maybe from what he normally averages. You start taking those touchdowns away, and you fall off this list pretty easily.
Yeah. So in my head, for good wide receivers, I get a lot of playing time and so forth. So, not your number 4 wide receivers or whatever who might get 3 catches and a fluke touchdown, at the goal line or something. But, so it's usually about a 1 to 9.5 ratio of catches to touchdowns. So 75 catches and all, you would expect roughly 7, 8. That 13 is just way the more regression is going to happen back to the mean there. Okay. So just another little stat tidbit for folks out there. Now, there's some other names we talked about. I didn't add them to this. A lot of people like, oh, so he could get his bonus and all that kind of stuff. I went away there for a second, but I'm back. Sorry, folks. Not
Okay,
sure what happened.
I don't know if it was you or me because I've got storms and you've been lagging some for me, but I assumed it was me.
Huh. Well, so sorry about that for our audience. Hopefully, we haven't been having too much problems. But Mike Evans, I pulled him off the list because I think there's age, the fact that he barely uh, made it to 1,000 yards this past year. I think this is the year he doesn't get to 1,000 yards. I believe this is the year that you've got McMillan, you got Igbuka, you got Godwin coming back, that he probably doesn't play as much. He's historically had a few injuries here and there. So Evans is one that I pulled off for that regard. You pulled him off as well. Any other logic there, Sean?
No, I hated pulling Mike Evans off because he's one of my go-tos every year because he slides down every year and he hits 1,000 yards and he usually scores about 10 touchdowns. So this one hurt, but with the injuries mounting up, the youth that they have coming in, the mouths they have to feed, it's time to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah. So in one of my dynasty leagues, I've loved having Evans, but the whole thing of dynasty about trading him a year early as opposed to a year too late. So I actually traded him along with James Conner and actually Alua Conner, got a couple of first and a second as part of that deal. So I staying away from the age and so that I actually am practicing what I preach, for lack of a better term. All righty, so that's enough about who we pulled off. I know a couple of people have been asking questions, like on running backs in the running back show. Someone asked in the YouTube channel, "Why do we pull Kyron Williams off?" Because we hadn't discussed him specifically. If you have questions about some of the folks we didn't pull off, go ahead and type it into the comment section on the YouTube channel on the show, and we'll go in and be happy to answer those. Now, everybody is going to want to see who we're putting in to replace these folks. But before we do, just got to put a plug for IDP Plus. Go to idbplus.com, folks. Great website, great rankings, great tools, great writers and articles, great Discord channel for helping you. It's called IDP Plus, but they do more than just IDP. That's why they have that plus. Just like we're doing offense as well, there's offense and IDP experts both to help you out in the rankings and the tools and so forth that I was talking about. I'll support both offense and IDP. Take advantage. Check it out. idpplus.com. All righty. With that, let's go ahead and move in and let's see who we put into the top 12. And once again, I was fairly surprised how close we were. We actually had 8 of the 12 that did match, 4 of the 12 that did not match in terms of putting people onto the list. Okay. And one of the ones we started talking about was we talked about Mike Evans coming out. You put Emeka Egbuka, the rookie, even with Godwin, even with Evans, even with McMillan, even with Otten. So tell people why you put Egbuka on the list, even with all that competition in Tampa.
Sure. I mean, he first round pick. That tells you they definitely think highly of him. They were excited to get him. He's being raved about during practice right now from everybody. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans included. And the last update I got, Chris Godwin is not practicing or anything just yet. So I don't expect him to start right away this season. I do think he will be eased in. And so those targets are going to go somewhere. I think Ibuka gets them. I think he comes in right away, steals the show. He's being talked about as very Chris Godwin like in the way he plays and catches the ball, so he can fill that role. And then when Godwin does come back, we're going to see 3 receiver sets, 4 receiver sets. I expect him to leapfrog McMillan in a lot of these plays until they go 4 wide. And if an injury does occur to Evans, which is very likely for him to miss a game or two, there's more targets there. So I think the future is now. I think he's going to do enough, get enough targets. I think he's going to make enough catches, make enough big plays, and score enough touchdowns to just sneak on this list. Now, I'm not expecting him to just blow up and be top 12. I think he just sneaks in. But everything is lining up for him to not be the future next year, but possibly go ahead and start being the future now.
Interesting. And you bring up a good point with Evans, the injury concerns, and what we talked about in his age. Godwin's no spring chicken either. Godwin is going to be 30 as well as we move forward here, and coming back from that gruesome injury that he suffered and so forth. So the
Right.
playing opportunity may be there, and I like your dialogue about potentially him getting into the top 24.
One guy I considered heavily, I just don't know what to do with him. Uh, Mostly because I don't know how he's going to be played. Don't know how good this offense is going to be first year with Liam Cohen taking the helm here. Travis Hunter, one of the most polarizing players in fantasy football. Tell us more, Ricky.
I purposely put him on the list because I wanted to have that discussion for our listeners and so forth. And one of the things we talked about when we were talking about cornerbacks and Travis Hunter was the fact that you need to know your scoring system. And with Travis Hunter in particular, your scoring system is so critical. Most dynasty leagues, particularly most dynasty leagues that have offense and IDP, he's going to get scoring on both sides. So clearly he'll end up in the top 24 if he's listed as a wide receiver and he gets the IDP stats on top of that. So you'll get wide receiver stats and cornerback stats. At least that's Ricky's opinion. Okay. Even if you don't get IDP stats, when you see what Liam Cohen, the new head coach of Jacksonville, did with Baker Mayfield in that offense and how many different mouths they were able to feed and support down in Tampa Bay this past year, I think Travis Hunter will get enough time that Trevor Lawrence will support both Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter as well, enough for Hunter to get into the top 24. Squeaking into the top 24 with no IDP stats, much higher in the top 24 if you're allowed in your scoring system to get the IDP stats for tackles, interceptions, etc. So that was my logic in thinking. Sean, I know you didn't put him on the list, but anything you disagree with what I said or you'd add to that?
It's more of Trevor Lawrence I have a hard time trusting. For all the talk and praise he has been as a high draft pick, he's been mediocre. And if we look at Brian Thomas last year, his big games and when he was really rolling may have been attributed to being, rookie growing towards the end of the year. But it was Mac Jones feeding him the ball that got him all
Mac
those
Jones
points.
was absolutely.
So I do have some concerns for Brian Thomas to repeat his great production last year. So uh,
And you bring up a good point because Mac Jones is not the backup anymore this year.
he is gone. So
If
if he falters, if Lawrence falters or gets hurt, what's this offense look like then? So shaky quarterback play is one of the biggest concerns for me. And then depending on how much he plays offense and defense, will they want to overuse him on offense if he's also getting hits or whatever on defense? A lot of unknowns with a player like this. I want to see it for a year before I decide anything too crazy. But the intrigue is there. This could be one of the best seasons we've ever seen from anybody, or it could just be all hype. because
That's,
poor quarterback play.
so this is one of those high risk, high reward things, Sean, for
I,
sure. I
yeah,
don't disagree with you.
it's almost football time. I'm ready to see how this gets uncorked there.
Exactly. Now, one of the folks that you added to the list was Jaden Reed, and I must admit, I went back and forth on him a couple of times with some of these others that I put on the list, but I ended up not quite putting him on. But Sean, you did. Why don't you tell everybody why you did put him on the list?
Yeah, for starters, Jordan Love is going to be healthy again. That was a big reason they were so run heavy last year. After that first game or was the second game he got hurt, anyway, when he got hurt and missed some time, and then he was definitely slowed throughout a lot of the season. So they weren't able to really open it up and air it out like I think they wanted to. With him coming back this year, healthy, getting a fresh new start, PPR, I feel like Jaden Reed's going to be the main guy again. Strength of schedule looks great for him. Sure, there's some new mouths to feed. There's also some mouths that were fed last year that are still injured and may not be back anytime soon. We look at Christian Watson. I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. Dobbs was actually benched last year because he was frustrated with lack of targets and lack of play. And I expect him to be frustrated again this year with Matthew Golden coming in and probably leapfrogging him and stealing some of those as well. I do think if he does correct his dropping issue, he did have several drops last year, 8, 9, something like that. And we seen what he could do at the beginning of the season when he was firing on all cylinders. I think we'll see more of that this year from Jaden Reed.
All right. That's a fair point. And Jaden Reed, if you look at the first several games of last year before Love got hurt, Reed was in the top, what was it, 10 or 12? I can't remember early in the year. Then Love got hurt. They go to the running game, and all of a sudden Reed falls. Now, Reed did have drop issues.
Yeah,
Supposedly he's been working on his hands with the jugs machine, but I think he is one that could surprise, to your point, if if Green goes back to throwing the ball like they did before Love got hurt last year.
I do
And
think they will.
that was part of the reason I considered him, but didn't quite make it for me.
I get it
I was just worried about that distribution. To your point, a lot of mouths to feed.
for sure because you got to factor in not just Josh Jacobs. You got to factor in Tucker Crafts, Luke Musgrave probably even gets a few. But like I said, to at least start the season out, Watson is not going to be there. Dante Wicks, it was a fun dream. I don't see him being a big factor either. Dobbs, I
Another
think, is still banged up too. So I think he can get to a hot start and then just sustain as the year goes on.
like, quick tangent. Wicks was one I sold off in Dynasty as well too. I sold him at the peak. Peak. Oh my gosh, he's the
Yeah.
best thing. Red. Yeah.
Nice. Good move. Good foresight, Ricky. The other guy I played around with putting on here, I ended up going for his teammate instead. I put Xavier Worthy on here, and you went for Rashee Rice.
Well, I actually put both
You got
Rice
both of them.
and
That's
Worthy on the list, so we both agreed on Worthy. Now, part of this ties back to my thoughts about Mahomes.
right.
I have Mahomes throwing for nearly 4,500 yards this coming year. He had a very quiet 3,930 something, I believe it was, this past year, and that was with the injury issues they had at running back uh, with Travis Kelce averaging less than 10 yards a catch, with Pacheco being hurt, no Jerick McKinnon, and so forth. So part of this is, I think Mahomes throws for 4,500 yards. With that, that means he's able to feed a lot of mouths. And I see a pullback on Kelce during the year to protect him. As Andy Reid, we talked about on a previous show, Andy Reid said he's going to protect Kelce from himself. I just think they're going to use him less to preserve him for as the year progresses, as you get toward playoff time, where that Kelce use more. In the meantime, Rice is going to take over a lot of those old Kelce catches. And remember, Kelce had the 100 catch range every year. In 3 games before he got hurt in week 4. Rice had 12 catches, 24 catches, including 112 catch game, 2 touchdowns, and nearly 300 yards. Everything, he got hurt in game 4, plenty of time to cover, all indications are he's fully healthy. All indications that any kind of suspension won't happen this year, won't happen until 2026-27 season. So 25-26, he should be free from suspension. All of that. That's why I put in Rice. And as a side note, that's why I was confident putting in Worthy. And I think Marquise Brown won't be too bad either. I mean, he's probably going to be like a number 55 to 60 wide receiver, but on bye weeks and all, maybe Marquise Brown is someone you can even put to your lineup as well. Sean?
I was still concerned about the suspension when, which I didn't dig too deep on it on how that was looking. Uh, and then with ACL injuries, sometimes the explosion isn't there anymore, or it takes time to come back. We've seen it with tight ends, receivers, running backs. Some of them come right back like it's never an injury occurred, and others take time to, I guess, gain the confidence and find that explosion again, and just to come back. And I wonder how reliant he was with a lot of his speed and all, if that's something that's going to take some time to come back on, and maybe he gets kind of lost in the fold to start with. Maybe gets hot a little later, but I definitely considered putting him on.
All righty. Well, so one of the ones we both put on, what was interesting is I took his counterpart off the list, but you still left him on. And so I took off Tyreek. You left him on as being still in the top 24,
Mm-hmm.
but we both put in Jalen Waddle. So why don't you talk a little bit about why you're confident having both Hill and Waddle in your top 24?
Well, I'm not totally sure Hill's going to stay on the Dolphins all year. So I think wherever he goes, he will continue big time numbers. That's one reason I left him on. If he does stay on the Dolphins, he'll be just fine as well. And even with Tua getting hurt, uh, Jalen Waddle, if Tyreek Hill goes, he's the top receiver right away. Tyreek Hill's there, frees him up from some coverage. He's going to be wide open. The Dolphins have to come out swinging this year, or else we're looking for a new quarterback, new coach next year. So I expect them to come out hot and just lighten up both Waddle and Hill. As long as it is dependent on Tua. I do realize that. I do think Zach Wilson will be competent enough to at least keep throwing at these guys if he has to come in. And they will be behind the game, so he'll have to keep throwing. So garbage time stats are also a favorite of mine. And
They
for
all count.
fantasy, they all count. Yeah, I mean he's one of the more solid number twos. We just don't get to see him finish a lot because he himself has some injury concerns, and a fair amount of those are from Tua, from some bad throws. He's not very protective of Waddle at all times. So I do think they'll start out hot. And if it starts falling apart, Tyreek Hill moves on. Then Waddle's the main guy, gets all the targets. So I think there's going to be enough production for him all year. I do expect them to be behind in a lot of games. This defense is still trying to figure it out. This offensive line isn't the greatest, so quick passes. I think Waddle will get a lot of those, especially with Jonnu Smith gone now. I'm not sold on Darren Waller. Spoiler for next week. Uh, and I'm not sure Tua's going to have the time to try to hit those long shots to Hill like he wants. So I see Waddle being a big part this year of the offense.
So you and I had one similar thought there in particular, and that is we both see Tariq leaving the Dolphins at some point this year. The difference for me was when you look at some of the wide receivers that moved mid-season. Now, granted, Mike Williams isn't, you know, what he used to be, but Mike Williams went to Pittsburgh and didn't do anything there. Amari Cooper went to Buffalo and he didn't do anything there. Now Tariq's a notch above both of those guys, and yeah, he's running the fast 100-yard dashes, but he is over 30. I think he's 32 now, I believe, or going to be 32 during the season. So that has me a little bit concerned as well. So combination of him forcing his way out of the Dolphins, because I think the Dolphins are going to struggle this year. We
Yeah.
talked about it in a previous show that we think McDaniel's in trouble. The offensive line, I don't think they did enough to help out. I think Tua will do a lot of dumping off, and I think once Tyreek leaves, Jalen Waddle will get a ton of those targets, particularly with Jonnu going. So I think that's how I see it playing out. That's my narrative. It could be wrong, but both of us have Waddle making it to the top 24, though we differ a little bit on what's going to happen with Tyreek.
For sure. Uh, this was probably the easiest name for me to put on here. George Pickens going to
George
Dallas.
Pickens. My one disappointment is on a lot of the shows, particularly on the defensive side of things, and I think at quarterback as well. I talked about Ricky's narrative about Pittsburgh's just going to implode this year, and uh, now when we first started talking about that, Pickens hadn't been traded from the Steelers to the Cowboys, but I was so looking forward to Pickens and Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers on the sideline all together and what that would be like.
That's a
So, but
show
anyway,
itself.
yeah, but he's gone with Dallas, and all indication right now he's on best behavior. Even though Schottenheimer is known for having very run-heavy offense, I think their defense is going to be so bad that Prescott, we talked about on the quarterback show, is going to throw a lot, and I think he'll be in the top 5 in terms of passing attempts this year, which means he easily supports Lamb, he easily supports Pickens, and brings Ferguson back to some relevance this year as well. There's also part of the reason I had Javonte Williams going to the top 24. I think Prescott as well is going to throw in the mid 4,500 yard range, assuming he stays healthy, which the offensive line should be improved. And I don't think he's going to try and run as much. I think he will be throwing the ball a heck of a lot. Today he was even quoted. I saw on the NFL Network or maybe it was ESPN, how it was ESPN. Prescott was talking today how he's not worried about having any connection problems with Pickens at all. And there was discussion about Pickens when he's open, and even when he's not open, he's open because of his catch ability to catch contested balls. So anyway, for all those reasons, I think Pickens is easily in the top 24 and pushing near the top 12. I think Lamb stays at the top, and because Lamb gets so much, Pickens doesn't get all the way into the top 12, but easily see 2 Cowboys in the top 24 this year.
I'm right there with you. I'm seeing probably doubling his touchdowns from previous years, which I think his max is like 4. So yeah, I'm seeing him getting half a dozen touchdowns, 1,000 yards. This team's going to have to throw. I don't have very much confidence in the running backs at all, nor do I have much confidence in that defense. So they're going to have to throw to keep up. Shootouts. Maybe they're getting blowed out again by the Eagles or something, and they just got to make up a lot of garbage points. So yeah, it's going to be a field day for Dak, Lamb, Pickens. Spoiler for next week, Ferguson. This is going to be a fun offense again, as long as they stay healthy. Even if not, who's Joe Milton's the backup now? I think he's got a good enough arm; he can sling it to him as well. So I'm right there with you. He was the very first choice I put on here.
Yeah. Now I brought up Metcalf as well as part of this conversation. Of course, we both added Metcalf to the list. Metcalf, for all the physical attributes and all over the last year or so, he hasn't been putting up those 90 catch seasons and all, but both of you and I put Metcalf on the list. Why don't you share with the audience here why you put Metcalf on the list?
He doesn't have a lot of competition for targets to start with. Had Pickens still been there, it would have been a lot tougher to kind of figure this out, especially with that offense wanting to go very run heavy, 2 tight end sets and everything. That's just what Arthur Smith wants to do. He wants to run the ball, short pass to the tight ends, 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends if he can get them on the field. And Rodgers is going to want to throw, and I think the guy he's going to have the most confidence in is the big physical, fast guy, DK Metcalf. So we're going to see probably some long bombs here and there. Rodgers still has a bit of an arm to get it downfield. So, and with his size to jump up and get touchdowns, that's something you can't quite teach. It's size, and Rodgers can place the ball there for him. So I'm seeing touchdowns is probably what's going to carry Metcalf into this. I'm not totally sold on all the catches and yardage. I think touchdowns is where it's going to come at.
Interesting. And you're not concerned about Jonnu Smith or Pat Freiermuth just hogging targets from DK?
Freiermuth, no. Jonnu, maybe. Jonnu probably eats up the middle of the field. Calvin Austin's going to have a day or two, but I think it's pretty much all Metcalf. There's nobody else there unless Tyreek Hill shows up. That
Yeah,
could be
they
fun.
just made one trade. Who knows what might happen? You know,
Yeah.
yeah. And back to the combustible part. Now they got Jalen Ramsey in that mix as well. Just, whew, boy, this could be interesting, folks.
Mike Tomlin
Uh,
doesn't get enough credit for the egos he has managed over the years.
exactly. This might be the one where it's a tipping point.
Hey, he's getting old. I'm sure patience is wearing thin.
Aaron
Um,
Rodgers and Arthur Smith. Aaron Rodgers with
oh man,
Metcalf. Yeah, Ramsey with the defensive coordinator. You name it. It's just going to be something else.
it's a
And
reality show at its
If
finest.
Watt doesn't get his contract and ends up showing up, or without a new contract extension, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of ugly there. Okay, so when we talked about McLaurin, I talked about Debo here a little bit, and I feel really good about Debo. Now, you put one other person I just want to talk about because there was a different 49er almost put on the list. You actually put Jawan Jennings on the list. I did not. Um, Ricky Pearsall actually was close to being on the list for me. The way he finished the season, and seemed to be getting in stride with Purdy. Jennings had that stretch during the middle of the season, but maybe not quite as strong as the year progressed. But so why'd you go with Jennings? You see him as the number one until Ayuk's back, and are you not expecting Ayuk back anytime soon? Because neither one of us put Ayuk on the list.
Yeah, I don't see IU playing enough games to get on the list or having enough performance, even when he does come back. I think it's a eased in kind of thing because you got Kittle there. He's solid, so he's got it covered. Juwan Jennings just has a connection with Purdy. Even you go back when Ayuk and Debo were both healthy there in hard times in the playoffs when he was, you know, when the pressure was coming in, he was targeting Jennings. Like that's his safety blanket, and you can see in the games like he's looking for Jennings. They have a connection, and I think it's going to be strong enough to keep him just inside the top 24. I'm thinking 20 at best. Assuming that they get a full season out of Jennings here. Pearsall I also considered. So do any of us have much confidence in CMC really staying healthy?
Nope. I talked about
So
that list. I did not have him on my moving into the top 24 or anything this coming year. I was totally
some
off that bandwagon.
exactly. There's some more targets there are going to these guys. Pearsall, Jennings, Kittle, I think are all viable options. You can get them all later in the draft. Maybe not Kittle, but you're going to pay up for Kittle. But yeah, Jennings, Pearsall, either one could make this lift, or they'll both just miss it. It's that kind of season. But seeing the connection between those two, that counts for a lot. And so when you got somebody's trust as a quarterback, you're going to get those targets because I trust you, and that's what Jennings has shown. And I do think Jennings got hurt or suspended or something there towards the end. Maybe he missed a game or something. I can't remember at the end
It
of the season.
wasn't suspended.
Wasn't suspension? Okay, there was something weird. Maybe he got kicked out of a game or something early. I don't
Oh,
know, but
yes.
and I think that was one of the games where Pearsall really went off. So I tried to not look at that too much, but Pearsall was another name I did consider on here. Um, One more I didn't put on there was Nico Collins.
Yep. So Nico was number two from a wide receiver perspective for the first 5 weeks, and then he had that injury, catching that long touchdown pass. And then when he came back and the offensive line was falling apart and Stroud was struggling and blah, blah, blah. So Nico has not necessarily been a 17 game per year player, but I think he will be healthy enough. I think there'll be enough improvement in the Texans team. I still worry about that offensive line, but I think there'll be enough there in Stroud to be able to support Nico into the top 24. I don't see him getting to the top 12 because I still have
Yeah.
legitimate concerns. But as the number one wide receiver for Houston, and if he could stay healthy for 15, 16 games, I think Nico makes it back to the top 24. I was actually, have to admit, I was surprised after knowing how well he started when the top 24, when I pulled the summer together for us to work from, that Nico was not on that list.
Yeah, it's the injury concerns, and I am actually less confident in this Texans offense. Stroud's been okay. last year he was okay. I mean, he's had to deal with a lot of receivers getting injured and stuff, so it is a lot of turnaround. Uh, I don't know. I just don't feel like this offense is dynamic enough to support a bunch of mouths. If you look at running backs, it's Chubb and Mixon. They're basically the same running back. Not very exciting. Collins, we've seen him have great games, and then we've seen him miss 4, 5, something like that. So injury concerns there. You got a lot of Tank Dell's probably not playing this year. If he does, it's going to be late, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing this year.
I don't
There's no
either.
way.
I really don't. Uh, who else is there? Robert Woods has some.
Oh, he went to
He's
Woods is with the Steelers
he
now.
went to the Steelers. Okay, so
Yeah.
he's
So
gone.
it's Christian Kirk and then 2 rookies, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel.
I like Kurt. I think he's the short option, the PPR kind of guy. I almost put him on this list, but with the rookies, I don't know what everybody's role is going to be really. But I do know Nico Collins is going to get hurt at some point this year, and I don't think he's going to have enough stats to stay up there.
Yeah, there's a number of these comments we've made on a lot of these shows that, like the one you just said, Nico will get hurt this year, that we may have to do some snippets on at some point and pull together about some of these prognostications here that we made.
It's all right. So if his 4 years already, he's played 14, 10, 15, and 12. There's, that
Yep.
tells me all I need to know.
That there's not a 17 in there anywhere, was there?
Nowhere, not a
I didn't hear a
16
16 either. Exactly right.
either.
All righty. Well, as a side note, okay, since we're talking about the Texans, quick running back thing. One of my oldest son who texted me, would you have picked Mixon or Swift? He didn't even tell me if it's a redraft or a new dynasty league or whatever. He said, would you have drafted Mixon or Swift? I said, neither. It's my first response to his text. And then he said, well, I picked Mixon. I said, well, if I had to pick between the two, I would have picked Swift. Not that I feel good about it. And you should have watched our show last week that came out where we
Yeah,
talked about those guys.
we're negative about both of those guys. So
Exactly right. All righty. Well, look, with that, we're good. That wraps up our wide receiver conversation for today, folks. If you're listening via Spotify, go to the IDP Plus YouTube channel. You can go and look at the charts and read all the names and so forth. And as a reminder, I mentioned it during the show at a really awkward or weird time, but I'll mention it again that these are not the order per se, just who we see coming into the top 24. And I purposely put them on the slide in a way to kind of put certain names side by side, like make sure Worthy was next to Rice and so forth. So not any kind of order, just that they will make it into the top 24. Okay. Before we preview the tight ends, just want to give a shout out for the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, August 8th through 10th. Ticket prices are about to go up. So if you've been on the fence, now's the time to make that decision. Buy those tickets before the prices go up. Great time. Meet all kind of people, the Jeff Manns and the Howard Benders and the Jeff Ratcliffes, who you might, if you hear on Sirius XM, or depending on if you follow some of the bigger websites out there. Lots of other names from the industry will be there. I'll be there. Come up and introduce yourself if you come. A lot of fun. Big party Friday night, big party Saturday night, all kind of drafts against all kind of other people who love fantasy football on Saturday afternoon. The Kings Classics drafts start on Saturday morning. There's an IDP one that I'm a part of. There's others there's a redraft and an auction one that a lot of the bigger names are also a part of. There's a women's one. You can go and watch all of these in the background as well. Not to mention go and visit the Hall of Fame. So check out the fantasyfootballexpo.com. It is the fantasyfootballexpo.com. They do a tremendous job. Come on out, enjoy it, folks. And as a side note, Bob Lung, who runs the Fantasy Football Expo and is the godfather behind it. He also has this fantasy football consistency guide that's available on Amazon. So if you're looking, it's a really great magazine. Takes into account week over week success versus peaks and valleys and so forth, where you could have someone who scores 30 points one week and then 4 points and 4 points. All of a sudden, 38 points average over 3 weeks. That's about 13 points. It looks good, but really they only helped you one of the 3 weeks. Check out the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Really good stuff on Amazon. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and move to the tight ends for this coming next week's show. And Sean, For tight ends, 6 of the top 12 repeat versus wide receivers where it was 5. And 15 of the top 24 receivers repeat at 15 of the top 24 tight ends where it was 12 for wide receivers. So you think that's going to make our job a little bit easier? Or with tight ends, this is just going to be another challenging one.
The hard part is going to find the replacements, I think, because you're 24, there's 32 teams. Not many people have, multiple tight ends that you could start on each team. So maybe Darren Waller does get on there just because we have nobody else.
He
That's going
he
to be
just
depressing next week, folks.
But once again, we do want to help you draft next year's best team. So we do want you to tune in. We'll give you our thoughts on why we're keeping certain people on the list and why we did pull them. And I have a feeling there's some people in the top 12 that will be pulling off the list that you may be surprised and want to hear that dialogue, because we will be pulling 9 off that list. Heck, we may, as we go through it, even though it might be hard to find 9 to put on, there might be others that we pull off and we have to find more than 9 to put on. We'll see as Sean and I kind of go through that list. All righty, Sean, anything you would add as we wrap up our wide receiver show today?
Again, we're just looking forward to next year using what the stats are telling us. Stats are telling us 12 of those guys are not going to finish in the top 24 next year. It's tough. We try to use our reasoning, try to help share that with you guys. Why you make some cases for some of these guys that probably aren't going to make it. We could be wrong. It's happened once or twice, but yeah, just focus on next year, not just what happened last year. We're looking at multiple years here when we're looking at these guys. I didn't just look at Nico Collins and say he gets hurt, 5 games last year. It's over the course of his career, he has not made it. So
It's a
yeah,
Christian Watson continual trend.
exactly. He's going to get hurt too. He's going to be hurt to start with, so I don't know if that counts if he gets hurt again or not. So, but yeah, just we're looking forward, and we are using the best we can to kind of help you guys to find those 12 that are going to not make this list. So hopefully we can all be more successful this year.
Right, exactly right. And I just want to put one final plug up there for Gary Van Dyke, also known as the IDP tipster. His wife went through breast cancer, and his story is out there. You can find it on the internet and so forth about his wife. And he runs a breast cancer awareness charity event. And you can go and sign up. Go to the idpplus.com website. You can find out more about it and join. You can also look up at the IDP tipster on X, find out more about it as well by scrolling through his timeline there. There are a lot of IDP leagues, and so if you've never played IDP and want to try it out, it's a great safe way. We're just Gary's just asking people that play to make some sort of small donation to one of 4 charities. You see that once again in the write-up of which ones, and obviously it's related to cancer, as you might imagine. And so a small donation, you can get into a 22-round draft IDP. You'll be probably engaged with a lot of people that are involved in IDP and learn through the process for nothing more than just a donation to a great cause. So I want to encourage people to do that as well. Okay.
We've already filled 12 of those that I know of. There may actually be more.
Yeah, and I know there's Sean, you and I ended up in one of the same ones, and I noticed that there's a couple of people who look to be fairly new based on their draft patterns, and I'm very confident as they see the others and how we're drafting, and as they get into the season, they're going to learn a lot more. They're going to become IDP addicted just like we are.
That's what we need, more addicts.
We need more IDP addicts. Exactly right. All right, with that, if you like this show, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have comments, questions, suggestions, thoughts, whatever it is, put it on this show on our YouTube channel, and Sean and I will be periodically checking to give you feedback or answer your questions or whatever it might be. Give me a follow at RickyRod66. Give one for Sean at Sean8386 on X. And of course, you can catch a replay of this and all our other previous IDP Plus shows on, or the IDP Plus advice shows, I should say, on the IDP Plus channel. There's a great one, including my 2-hour rookie one linebacker fallouts post the draft. You name it. A lot of great shows out there that you can check out as well. As if you've been particularly you've been taking the off season off and you're just jumping in now as things are starting to kick back up, definitely go and watch some of those older shows as well. Okay, with that, we will see you in about another week or so. On behalf of Sean Teague, this is Ricky Rodrigue wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we're out of here, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.